In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a chatbot which is backed by Openai API. I'll be using Next.js, TypeScript, React, and Tailwind CSS. I'm here to guide you through every step of this project, ensuring you understand the process and learn some cool techniques along the way. To follow up this video, please go to cadhas.com, which will have the documentation for this practice. Cadhas.com is your gateway to mastering coding, whether you are starting fresh or expanding your skills, with real-world projects and clear lessons. It's a practical and engaging way to fast-track your career journey. So from the left menu, select React.js and then click the practice project. This is where this practice project is. We'll follow along this documentation to develop the chatbot application. Before we dive into the code, let's understand our goal through the user story. So this is the user story. As a user, I want to have seamless and real-time and intuitive chatbot experience so that I can interact with the chatbot easily and effectively. And to achieve this, I have laid down some acceptance criteria that should be fulfilled. And also, here are the steps we need to follow to implement the application. The step 1 will be project setup, then the UI design, then the API, and after that, Openai integration to get the ChatGPT 3 model response. And then finally, we'll just finalize to do final touch and then conclude. This is what it's gonna look like. We'll be inserting a chat, which will chat with our chatbot, and the chatbot will respond with actual response from Openai ChatGPT 3.5 model. So this is what it looks like. We're gonna have a component to display this chat message, one component, and another component to contain this chat input and then the click button, and we'll have a home page component that will have this three column grid and then the main content in here. So we'll work on those three components, and then we'll work on with integration with Openai on the backend. So as this is an Next.js application, we'll have backend server-side codes running as API, and then those API will also communicate with Openai to get a real response. First things first, let's start the project setup. We'll create a new Next.js application using the create next app template, and we'll name it my chat app. This will bring in all the required dependencies and then prompt us with the preferences. So yes, we'll be using TypeScript. Yes, we want and lint for commit checking, and also yes, we want Tailwind CSS, and also we want the source directory structure, the experiment app. Let's say yes for that also. And the import alias, this is important because we want to import with the alias @ instead of the actual or relative paths on our import statements. And this will now is bringing all the dependencies required. All right, let's go to Visual Studio Code and see what was created for us. I'm gonna open the folder that's just created, which is this folder. Let us see the contents in there. So we have the public directory, where we want to add some static assets to use there. And we have the source directory, which will have the app directory. And inside the app, we'll have the APIs. And the API is where the route lies. So this signifies under API/hello, then we'll have this handler, get handler. And we have the package JSON where we have all initial dependencies included, TypeScript configs and Tailwind configs as well. We have the home page, which is this, and we don't need this, we'll get rid of it later. And we have the main layout. If we want something universal available for all pages, we'll put it here on the layout. Type in npm run dev, which is the scripts. You will find them here. So now we're running this one. If all goes well, then we should be getting a localhost URL, which is this. We'll open that. I'll copy it and then open it up here. Yeah, so we have this page open. This is what it looks like. This is the default template that comes with it. We don't need it. We can modify that and then see. It should immediately update here. Yeah, that's it. So we have our project set up. The next step is the UI design. We'll proceed to that step.
Looking at the UI elements, let's go to the next section. So here, first we have to create some models that we're going to use to communicate between the backend and the front end. So let's start with the model class. Let's create a folder for interfaces, and then in there we'll create a model class. Now here we can create the enum. We'll use this to identify messages if they are coming from user or if they are coming from the bot. So we'll have user and bot. Then we'll have also the message itself. So this will have a source identifier, which will be the source enum, and then we'll have a content, which is the actual string message. Then the last one will be message payload. This will be the payload that we'll be using to communicate between with the API. This will have the list of messages that were communicated before this call. This will give us good session context that we can pass on to Openai so that it will understand what kind of conversations happened before the last prompt. Then we'll provide the last prompt, which is also a string. Next is we have to create the components that are needed. We'll have a main window that will host the chat component that will display the chat and auto scroll, and then we'll have another component at the bottom that will accept the prompt text, and then we'll have a send button. So these two components Let's start creating. Nothing here, but under components we'll have the chat input and chat window. This will be T6 because it's going to have J6 syntax in it. And then we'll have again window. So chat window has to be a client component because it will have a dynamic contents that will interact with the client. So to understand what a client component is, you can go to Next.js documentation. There we can look at the section for rendering, and under rendering you'll see that there are multiple rendering techniques. It's good to go through this documentation because Next.js is a powerful React framework that uses server-side rendering extensively, and so there are components that will be rendered on the server side, and there are components that are rendered dynamically on the client side and interact with the client. So you can inject client component into server-side components. You can look at around this documentation how to work around, but it's important that you know distinctions. Okay, let's start here. Let's documentation. So client components are marked with this string. Next.js will know that this is a client component if you have this at the top level. So we need an interface that for an input for this component. So this component only needs the list of messages to display. So let's start. Create the component itself, which we'll call it chat window, and it will accept an object that has messages. So this is the props we declared earlier, and then alright, so we'll render simple div now. So what should we have in this div is a list of messages on top of each other, like user, then bot, then user and bot, and user and bot. So we'll map the messages list into its own entry on the screen. In order to do that, we need to map from the message. Then we'll take in each message and the index in which the message is there in the array. We need this for to create a unique key on the component below. React demands that. Okay. Now inside this we need to render the message itself, actually the content. So so we have to identify if the message is coming from the bot or the user, so that we can indent the user message to one side and the bot message to the other side, and then also give them some kind of different coloring. That's why we're doing this here, so that we can decide what class to use. So those are so here you can see that the text is aligned on the right when it's a system message, and then it's aligned on the left when it's a user message. So those are Tailwind CSS syntax. You can look at the Tailwind CSS documentation to understand more how to use those classes. For instance, this means margin right 10, so give the component, the element, a margin of 10 on the right side, and this means margin left, and then you'll give it this color also. So this class is applied in the class name, as you can see from here. I'll copy the entire. This means that we'll know from the message source that if it is from bot or from the user, then we'll create this flag, and based on this flag we'll choose between those two styles, and then we'll add additional those CSS styles as well, Tailwind CSS styles as well. So this should give us the chat window component, and then yeah, of course we have to export this component to make it available for other components to ingest. Let's go to the chat input window. This is the one that accepts the user input, and that also has the send button. It's the same way. This will be a client component, and then let's go to the client component. Here you can see we have props that accept a function that will be executed when the user clicks send on the message that the user wrote. So we can start creating the props. It will accept a prompt text string, and then return nothing. So this input expects the process prompt function to be passed to it. This is called object destructuring. You can extract the properties from an object and then declare it as part of your variable declaration inside your component. So we have to maintain state of the message which the user is typing in, and then use that state to send, to execute the process prompt function with that. This is maintaining a state in React. The message will be of type of string, and we initialize it with empty string. It will give you the actual message. You'll use this to execute whenever there is an update on that message. Then we'll render. So you'll have a text area that the user will be writing the text on, and then you'll have a button that the user clicks when they are done and ready to send. Okay, now we need to create the send message function, which is it's used as on click handler. When the user clicks the send message button, this send message will be executed. So will be a function that doesn't take anything, and then executes the process prompt by passing the message that the user typed in, then clears the message for the next prompt. That means we'll see in the input window being cleared, the message the user typed will disappear. So this will be our chat input component. Now we have to put those components into another parent component, which is the home page. What we have here. So here, this will also be client component because we have to manage the state of the list of messages that are being maintained whenever the user inserts a new message, and then we get a response from the bot. So we have that. So as you can see, where as you can see, we have to import those two we just created. Okay, something we did not try this chat import. I will not exporting that. Now it's complaining that we haven't created message and send message. We don't have anything. So we'll maintain a state of the message. We'll have a message that the user enters and a function that will update whenever the user clicks sends the message. So this will have a message array, and then we can initialize the array for now, but later on it should actually be actual content that's created by user, and also a response from Openai. So our message will be, sorry, this has to be message and set message because it's plural, and this will cover the set message. Now we have to create a function that sets the message. Sorry, send message. This will send to packet. For now, let's just make it do nothing. So we have our components prepared. We should be able to see something on the screen now.
The local server. All right, it's up. Let's refresh the page. There you go. So we have our mock data is displaying as a message list. So this is the user message, and this is the response from the bot. Of course, currently it's just a mock. Now you see this is the chat window, and this is the chat input components. We can proceed with the next step. The backend APIs. So one thing I love about Next.js is it makes it easy for you to have both your backend logics and front-end logics on the same project and make those communicate really seamlessly. So the next step is creating the API. So we'll go to the API folder here, and then we'll declare there is already a hello route, which is a dummy route. We don't need that. We can create a new one or maybe update this. We'll rename it to message, and then the route will be so you can declare a handler for each verb like this. This is a handler for the get request, and there you can have handler for the post, put, and delete, and all that. Now we'll be needing the get request first in order to render the message on the chat view component, which is this one. So we'll return a new response of this message. So we have this message in the page component. Now we can get this and then initialize the page component with empty array. If you go and look at here, there will be nothing. So we'll use this in the backend now. So let's declare the type also. It will be a message array. So we have this. Now the next step would be we're not yet to implement this, the post method. We'll implement it when we need it. Now we're just integrating this to the front end. Now on the front end, if you come here to the home page, now we need to, when the page loads, we need to fetch the message list from the backend, which is using the use effect hook of React. So you will pass it empty dependency array so that it will run only once during page load. And then we'll create a fetch message function that will execute. This will be asynchronous. Response will be okay. So the path will be, as you can see, it's under API messages. And then the method will be get, and we'll have a response that will give us back the list of messages. Let's extract that. Then from the response, we'll extract the JSON payload. What am I missing here? Fetch, see, this should be inside. JSON, this will give you the payload object as a JSON. And then now that you got the message, you have to update the message state by the new value. So which we'll be using this to update our message. That's it, right? Now on page load, we're fetching, we have to run this function here. All right, now we're on page load, this will be executed, which means this function, which will fetch from the API the message data. Once we get the message data, then we'll use this data to update our message state holder. This should work now as it was before. We have to reload the page so that this gets executed. Nothing happens. Compile the page message and route API. Oh, of course. So we have to stringify this. There you go. Yes, all right, so now we have that. Let's go back to our page component and follow up on the other steps. So we have this. The next step is when the user clicks send here, this will execute the prompt message, and then we'll have a process prompt message, which is a send message in this implementation. And then when the message is sent, the payload is constructed and sent to the backend with a post method, and then the backend will communicate with Openai and gets a response, update the message list, and give us back. So in order to do that, we need to create a handler for the post message. We'll go to the route and then we'll create export async function. All right. Now the export async function is what we have here. So technically, this is checking if the request body is not empty. We have to make sure that it's there, and then start processing. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to do that. Let's just if the request body is not empty, then so the message payload, if we have see here, which we will implement later, will have on the model, we have this message payload, which is the current prompt the user entered, and the previous message list of message conversations that happened between the user and the bot. So here we need to construct a payload. So we'll assume that the user will send us this message payload, or we can go and start implementing send message first. Yeah. So here we have the send message, right? So it expects a prompt, which is string. Now this will be the message payload. We're going to send back to the API. We'll provide a prompt that's provided to us here, and then we'll provide the message list also. This should be prompt. Now we'll have and then we'll be getting a response which is from the API. Before we do this, let's go back to the API and then start implementing the API now. So if you come here, yep, you'll see that. Now we know that our payload comes with a prompt and a message, right? Let's destructure this payload into prompt and then message is equal. This will give the request body, and then we map it as message payload, right? Now we have the prompt and the message. Now we have to update the message list with the new message. Push. Now what are we going to push? So this is the prompt is the user message, right? That will be the source, will be source user, and then the content will be the prompt, right? Now we inserted this one message into the list. Now we have to insert the bot response message into the list again, right? But we haven't done the integration with Openai yet, so let's just mock something and then add it there. Now, in this case, it will be the bot that will be responding, and then the response will be let's just say that, right? Now we have updated the message list, then we can return back to our caller. Right? So if the request body is not doesn't have a value, then we should be at least responding something. We'll return a bad response. Message will be bad request, and then our status will be 400. All right, let's try this. Before we go there, so we have to implement. Now we have the post handler. Let's finish up the home page and get the response. Right, we have that implementation here. We'll fetch from message. This should be a sync. And now, if the response Then we got the response. If the response, if we get okay, which means the response is successful, then we'll update our message uh, state with the new message we got. Right? Okay, now we have this. That means post should also work. Let's see. Now test prompt and then hit send. Voila. We are getting a bot response, which is a mock actually, which will have OpenAI integration next. Let's see, that's the next step, right? I haven't missed any step. Okay, so on the next step, we'll have integration with OpenAI. Then that's where we're going to integrate with OpenAI and we'll actually get a real response from ChatGPT 3.5 model or whatever you're going to configure it when you are working on this exercise. Let's start integrating OpenAI, which is the fun part. Um, in order to do that, at first we need a OpenAI API key. To do that, let's go to OpenAI and then get API key. I have multiple API keys here. I will be using this, or I can create a new one, which of course I will delete after this video. Capture this, and then according to this step, we'll have this in our environment variable. So let's create the environment variable. And then we'll paste this, but it should be named. Now we have API key, which we can use to communicate with OpenAI. Keep your API tokens secret, because if someone grabs it, then they're gonna make a lot of calls on your behalf and they will be charged a lot of money. Also put notifications on setup on the OpenAI, so that when you reach certain limit, certain amount of money, you will get notified. That's important. OpenAI integration. We have already created the API token for and related to our environment variable. So let's go to the OpenAI reference documentation. The API reference, which means we need to install this plugin, which I have already installed. In my case, we can see that, yeah, I have it here. We can go ahead and install that. Then the API key, we have that, and then this is the library we're going to use, the Node.js package library. So for this library documentation, you can follow this URL here. You can see they have setup and then request response for a few examples. You can follow that example, which will do the same. So for that, according here, we need to create a compilation class, which is a service class that will communicate to OpenAI. So let's create OpenAI folder in case in the future we add more. Actually, let's have it under source. In the future, if we have more, then we'll add it here. The model we're using is completion. And the request we're using is completion. So here, as you can see, we're creating configuration. One thing I haven't shown you is the org ID. You can get the org ID from your OpenAI account and then have it in your local environment. So let's start doing this. Yeah. So first we'll create the configuration. We'll pass this configuration on every request uh, as part of the payload. The API key, which should come from our environment variable. Opening an API key. And the same for the org ID. Now we need to construct our Openai instance. Now we'll be using Openai API. So this should come from the Openai. I don't know why it didn't import it automatically, but and then we have to pass the configuration we have provided. Now we have Openai API instance. So the next is to create the method. So we'll export this method, make it accessible, and then so now in this case it's GBT3, but in your case it could be 4 or 5, depends on the time you're looking at this document and video. Then this will need a prompt, which is a string, and then message, which is list of array of message. Now here we need to construct a conversation which will be passing on to the OpenAI, which will be type of chat compilation message param. Yeah, and it's gonna be an array. Let's initialize it with empty array, and then now we will iterate with all the message that's passed to this method as a param, and then add it to the conversation. Now, when we push the message with message, then we have to specify the role. You can look at the documentation here. You can see that the message, it expects an array of type with a property role and content. The role either can be a user, system, a function. There are options. You can see, go to the definition here. You see that we have a content and the role has to be either system, assistant. It's one of those. For us, we'll use this assistant. So let's go back to our steps. And then so the role depends on the message source type, right? So if the message source equals source user, then we'll use user, otherwise we'll use assistant. And then we'll have content, which is actually message content. Now we iterate on all our elements in this message, then added it to the conversation. So the next step would be to request to OpenAI and get the next response from OpenAI, which will be the assistant response. Okay. But before that, we need to add the last prompt, which is role of user and content of prompt. Now let's create the request response process with OpenAI, which is this. So if you look at the documentation on OpenAI npm package library, you can see that it will have chat, and then under chat we have compilations. Then we can create. This will make API call to OpenAI, and you can pass like the model, what kind of model you want to use. You can look at the list of available models on the documentation, and the maximum token you will allow for this request, which is technically the size of the entire conversation message you're passing. And this determine the response intensity and other things. We can look at further on the documentation. There should be more adjustments you want to do, and you can follow that. So once we make this request and we'll get a response from there, we can look at the OpenAI response structure to see. This is the reference, right? If you scroll down, you'll see the structure. You'll go to choices and then message, and then inside the message you'll have content. This is what's happening here. Response choices, the first element in the choice, and then inside it will get message, then a content. Once you get that, you can return back that to the caller, right? So now we have this method implemented. It's time to use it in our route. So here in our route, we'll create we'll import that, and then we'll pass the prompt messages. Then we'll use this response in here. But now this is saying string or null, so which means we have to make sure that this is not null before trying to use it. Now we have that. Now we don't need this initializer. We can start from empty, right? What else? I think we should be good. Let me see the steps. We have had this, we had this, and then we have updated this, yes. Okay, so it's time to test it. Let's run the local server. Okay, we can come here, yeah, we can reload. There should be nothing here because we have removed the mock list of message. Let's say hi to our bot and then click send. Yep, how can I help you? This is a response from Openai. Let's see if it remembers our previous conversation. 3 plus 3. Then we'll send this. It says equal 6. Okay. What if I add 7 to it? Yeah, you see, it remembers that on our previous conversation we have 6. Now it's saying if you add 7 to 6, then the result will be 13. Yep, there you have it. This is a very simple version of the conversation you can implement. The next step, we'll try to give it a little better look. Not that much, but just a little better look than this on the final touch. Let's do the final touch. Um, there isn't much changes in the final touch. So let's start with the chat window component. There you go. So here, the only change you have is the outro scroll effect. So when the user enters a prompt and then a response comes back from OpenAI, a new entry will be inserted in the chat window, which we have to scroll down to for it to make it visible. You don't see it on the previous example because we don't have much message there, but as the message grows, it goes to the bottom and then it gets hidden. So this is a must. We have to have this scroll effect. The other changes on the main window, now we have multiple columns. You can have those multiple columns so that in the left column you will have like conversation history, and on the right column you can add some interactive functionalities to your chatbot, and in the middle you'll have of course the whatever we have worked on. So let's test this. Let's go to our localhost and then load this. You should see the page route is loading. We did not see anything, but just okay, it was coming. Now you see you have 3 columns. Our work so far is in the middle. This is the provision which you can remove or add functionalities here. If you look at ChatGPT, it has a left menu where you can pick from your conversations. You can have something like that there. Now let's say hi to our chat assistant. Yeah, we have it there. Then what days today? There you go. And today, you see that. So as we add more conversation here, you'll see it auto scrolling so that it doesn't go under here. That's the only improvement we have on this. You can further improve this chatbot if you want to work on it and add some other functionalities. So this we already have ChatGPT to do this, but you will be implementing this for other use cases which you can think of and make it specific feature. That's it for this tutorial. If you like this content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and head to cadhouse.com and then look at our documentation. Enjoy.